Okay, so we have this sheet of paper, okay, which has a question or rather statement written on it. Yeah? The papers have a statement written on it. I'm going to give one to each table, and if we fall short of tables, just move on to the next table. Okay? What you have to do is, in your groups, you have to brainstorm, come up with your experiences, whatever, and put down points. Okay? You get 5 minutes to do that. So it will really show how quick you are and how much you are good at venting, because you have to put it all down on this paper. Okay? And then we lead it into the panel. So 1 sheet per table, 5 minutes to brainstorm. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so this one question. Listen, guys, you don't have to take points. You're not getting marks. You're not getting a report. Just listen, enjoy. Today is the day when you don't have to write down FCRA compliance date, income tax. No. Just listen and enjoy. For NGOs addressing causes like education, healthcare, livelihood, communication is easy, emotive, and effectively attracts funding and support for the cause. Okay? They had reasons why they agree. Okay? Whoever has this question and why you agree, can you all tell us? Want to tell us?
Well, the table came up with that generically we don't agree, as it is generally we don't agree, as it's a very general statement, in the sense that these are very broad, and education, healthcare, livelihood. So it could be that in education, maybe underprivileged children education might still get funds with good communication, but maybe a broad education program may not. Or in health, emergencies will attract more funds than chronic long-term emergencies, or say thalassemia or something like that. So that is what the table thought.
So let me also tell you that when I was in Akanksha once, I don't think you remember this, in the evening when office was empty and Abodh and I were both working at our desks, Abodh once told me that people may want to support dogs, but they may not want to support stray dogs. Do you remember this? So that's where it's come from. Okay.
So we said we disagree that it's easy to get funding because there are a lot of organizations doing work in healthcare, education, and livelihood, and how do you set your work apart?
That's a challenge, right? Making your communication stand out, because everyone's at the end of the day going to say, my kids have, done SSC, my kids have reached this level where they were not. Every NGO working in education almost sounds the same. Okay, next question. Having a celebrity associated with your cause can help you communicate the message of your cause more effectively. Agree or disagree? Firstly, how many of you agree on this? Having a celebrity associated with your cause, do you agree or disagree? Does it help? Vilma, does it help? Okay.
Agree only if the celeb can in one way or the other mirror your cause. For example, we have here Vidya Balan we thought of. She wears handloom saris. If she spoke up for handloom weavers, it would sell because she is emulating the cause. And also that the celeb should be a kind of a role model. For instance, if you have Akshay Kumar for, say, health, because he is into fitness and health, that would work.
Okay. Anybody who disagrees? No? Okay. Agents to handle. Otherwise, the celebs get all the importance. Annabelle, you want to say who the celeb is here?
We have a celeb, which probably most of you know who it is, and we often find it actually counterproductive because people think, oh, if he's supporting you, then why are you asking for money?
This is Sachin Tendulkar's mother-in-law. So I hear that Sachin donated half of his estate to Apna Le. Is that true? Just joking. I'm just kidding. Okay. The last question about online. Okay, sorry. Brand building for NGOs is an expensive exercise, but absolutely necessary. How many of you think it's necessary?
So we all agreed with getting into the brand building activity, and we feel that it creates awareness, merits the NGO, helps in fundraising, also helps in building the employer brand, so things like succession planning, etc. It doesn't need to be expensive is what we also felt. And it should stand out from thousands of other similar organizations, but it's important in advocating as well.
And you all disagree? Okay, so you're disagreeing.
Totally disagree. For 50 years, we've survived without brand building, and not single penny spent on this newfound jargon. Brand building is a jargon. You do your work and you focus on the cause for which the NGO is there. That itself will generate a brand.
Thank you. An online social media presence is absolutely critical and leads enhanced communication, outreach, and fundraising. Do you agree?
Our reasons for agreeing were that there's a wider outreach at a minimum cost. We reach the targeted audience very easily. Our message for communication is rapid, and it's an agile delivery of a communication as well. It can be changed very quickly and adapted to circumstances. It elicits feedback, and you can tell your story coherently, very easily again. And the multiplier impact is tremendous because it's shared.
Thank you. And here's a table that disagrees.
Well, we felt that social media is just far too wide. It's not specific enough, so you're just hitting out in the open space, and it's a hit and miss kind of association. Social media itself, you're not sure how long which media is around, which one's going to survive, where they're here today, they're not there tomorrow. There might be, because it's not focused enough, there possibly is not a match between the media that you're using and the requirement that you have. Responses just come in any old helter-skelter way. They may not be relevant, may not even be true or accurate, or people reply for the sake of replying without even applying their minds to it. And you have to have the ability to keep generating new messages. You can't, so you're constantly working on delivering new messages instead of just having a promise or a message that you want to deliver and keep holding on to. So you become diffused.
Okay, points I hadn't thought about.
So since it's only communication, we felt that social media might not be able to reach all the participants or the people that you're working with. They might not have access to it. So that's one aspect. The other one is you can't really control how it sort of unfolds or the discussion that unfolds, and that could go either way.
Any other table left out who didn't get a chance? Y'all?
Social media, is it critical? No. But yes, only if you have funds to dedicate a communication associate for that job. Communication outreach, yes. Fundraising, long-term, no. Crowdsourcing for particular project, yes.
So this was just to get you all started. We'll let our panelists now take over. Yep.
So lots of very disparate ideas in the room, and the reality is that, you know, as not-for-profits, on a daily basis, we possibly deal with all of those points of view. I mean, really, at the end of the day, our mind space is so taken up by our day-to-day operations that when it comes to communication, while in theory we agree you have to approach it in many ways, in practice, most of our energy is spent either writing grant proposals or writing reports, perhaps a press release, and then once in a while that dreaded speech that we have to make in public about, you know, what we do. All of which is, you know, it's valid. You don't necessarily have to think about a brand. But in this cluttered world that we live in, where there is so much other social media bombarding our stakeholders and the people that we are meant to talk to, the reality is that you do have to be proactive, you have to be purposeful, and you have to be thoughtful about, perhaps brand is a bad word, but the identity that you communicate and you project out to this world beyond. And, you know, I have with me 4 very illustrious people whose resumes you have in front of you, all of whom have truly approached this issue of communication in a way that has energized their stakeholders to be involved in the issues and the causes that they are involved in. So I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion, and we'll start with Dimple. Dimple, you've worked a lot in corporate communication and also with NGOs that focus on advocacy. And in the context of the social sector, how does one think about a brand? You know, what are the elements of it? What are things that you imagine are right to focus on?
See, I've worked with corporates, law firms. My focus with law firms obviously is corporate communications. However, a lot of the law firms today emphasize on pro bono work, which is where we have come into contact with NGOs. My first reaction to dealing with an NGO was, how are we going to move this, how does it work, stuff like that. So we reached out to Thomson Reuters. They have something called Trust Law Connect, which is an initiative launched by them. And when they came across to meet us, it really struck me how different things have become, because when we were in college, everybody wanted to do a little bit of, giving back to society. You did a lot of stuff. You went to Akanksha, which was everybody's favorite go-to place. And you realized when the Trust Law team came in that besides having about 20,000 law firms worldwide as part of their initiative, they actually wanted NGOs that had internet connectivity. Now, this was my first thought, really, like how many, NGOs are going to have access to this kind of, and they were like, you'd be surprised. They said, like, virtually 90% of the NGOs that approach them are connected, and, they would get on to, I mean, obviously not expecting the NGO to call them up, but they would, get in touch with them through the UK office. And that was their primary criteria, that the first thing the NGO needed to have was some kind of access to the internet. Now, in a day and age like this, while to the gentleman there who says branding is a jargon, it isn't, because in today's day and age, a brand is a name, it is, a style, anything that reflects that person or a company. And unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, you cannot ignore the fact that I mean, the old school of thought is your work speaks for you. Yes, it does. I mean, if you're going to put up, shoddy work, mediocre work, however much you try selling it, it's not going to work. Somewhere or the other, person will try you out the first time, the next time they won't. However, if your work is good, a lot of times how it is put across. Now, you can look at media as in journalists, you can look at media as in social media. But somewhere or the other, you require to get that message across. I work for a law firm that does a lot of cases that are related to big matters, confidential matters, matters that we are not allowed to speak of. And then you realize that, every and any firm that has done even a little bit of work for them will be mentioned, because then they have got their, corporate communication team, their PR team working on this, while you, who have your name on the wakalatnama, are not even mentioned. Now, you've done a whole load of work. You have spent like probably 400 man hours of your team on that. Do you get a mention? No. Today we have finally had to reach out to a PR firm, to kind of get us moving, teaching us. So all of this is all about branding, and branding, you cannot take it away from marketing and communication. They are all one and the same thing. They're all, it's branding is the very basis of marketing and communication. You cannot separate the two, and in today's day and age, it is impossible. You will be isolated, you can do the best of work, but you will have the kind of reach that is required today will not happen if you do not involve corporate communications. As a segment, it is growing. When I first started out in the field, it was considered more like a horizontal. Hai na, kuch bhi zarurat hai, they'll help out. But in reality today, I actually say that, if you all have practice areas, create us as a vertical. Pay us for the work we do, and you realize the absolute importance and relevance.
So Dimple, as you mentioned, it's important because it brings a certain visibility to your stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Mr. Goenka, I'm going to ask you, in your experience, you work in your work and environment with very large organizations, BNHS, WWF, they have long histories and legacies in this country. So there's one set of stakeholders that they are speaking with as an organization. But really often your work is quite local, right? It's in some specific community, some specific space. How do you think about communication at both of these levels in terms of the brand that you are associated with?
Okay, so first of all, we are privileged to have a panel of lawyers both in the Bombay High Court and in Delhi in the Supreme Court who appear for us pro bono. And when we started off with my first environmental litigation way back sometime in 1983, till today, I have not had a single lawyer who's refused to take up a case, unless, of course, he's appearing for the other side. And no, if there's a conflict of interest, obviously he can't appear. So, excepting for those exceptions, I've never had a situation where a lawyer has refused to appear for us. And for me, the brand, my work speaks for itself. The kind of work we are doing, maybe most people haven't heard of me or my organization. But I can tell you the Environment Ministry has heard of me. The Maharashtra government has heard of me. Various other CMs know about the kind of work we are doing. And that is why, in that message that I've sent out, I think making sure that your credibility remains intact, that whatever you're doing consistently over the past 30 years, you stick to your agenda, you don't deviate from it, you don't get pressurized because of donor pressure or from political pressure or whatever. I think that's really what has made us stand where we are. Now, FCRA, for example, I'll just give you one small example. FCRA is a huge contentious issue for all of us, or most of us over here today. And I was asked for my views 4 or 5 years ago. And I made a very simple statement. I said, if the government of India can survive without foreign funding and stops taking money from the World Bank and ADB and IFC and so on, then I think the NGOs won't need to take foreign funding either. And that actually got attention in Delhi at the highest levels. And there was a reaction also. But nothing happened to me. I'm still alive, surviving before you, and so on. 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, I was called anti-national, Pakistani spy, this, that, again at the highest levels and at the lowest levels. Today, I don't think anybody says that anymore. When we started our campaign against power projects, thermal power plants, we were very unpopular. But today, I think the government of India has realized that because we've stopped a lot of projects from happening, we've actually saved the country thousands of crores of rupees, which would have been invested in unproductive investments. You know, India is compared with China very often, GDP, this, that, and the other. I don't know how many of you know that China today has about $2 trillion worth of what they call stranded assets. Projects that they built up, infrastructure that they built up, which nobody is going to pay for, nobody is going to use. So in one way, as I said, if I can stand up and tell the Prime Minister why Ken Betwa is wrong, why investment in thermal power projects is wrong, and I can make a convincing case. If I can tell the Chief Minister of Maharashtra why the Navi Mumbai airport is going to be a disaster and justify my case, I think those are the kinds of things that make a difference in my world. As far as the communication part of it is concerned, a lot of the work we do is confidential. We have a website, but the website is very, very basic. We don't talk about the confidential part of our work. We don't talk about strategy. What we do is like an iceberg. The website is like the tip of the iceberg. 99% of it is underwater. What you see is just the bare minimum.
So I sense that for you, that brand comes both from a legacy of having done work consistently, and of course the fact that you continue to communicate with the government, which is your stakeholder in this situation. There's a lot of issues that us in the social sector work on that are just so intractable that there are multiple people working on them. Education, health, sanitation, these are, domestic abuse, big enough that it takes multiple people to work on them. What tends to happen then is the people that you're talking to often see it all as in one swath, right? They think there's a lot of clutter, they're hearing a lot of other things, they also imagine that what you're doing is all the same. How are you distinctive? And really, Soumya, I want you to talk about this because, 2 years ago, right, you decided to start a school in Pune. Education, Pune, these are things that people have heard before. So how do you remain distinctive and make sure that, what you do is heard in that context?
Let me start by saying that just communication, we run 4 schools in Pune right now, and my single biggest strength is my 61-member team. In my next year, we're going to go to 105 people. This, who I get on board for these new 44 people that we are hiring, will make the world of difference between what we're able to give our students versus what we are not. And how am I going to go out there and find these 44 people? Communication just happens to be the single best thing that we need to do. So just recruitment for me is so big and so important that communication just has to be really strong. The second bit that is really important is just resource mobilization. I'm just saying this in the context of establishing what is the purpose of the communication. I think it's the lifeblood of our organization. If we didn't communicate well, we could not have functioned. We cannot give our students the education, the excellent education that we're trying to give. So this resource mobilization becomes so key, whether it's for space, whether it's for funds, whether it's for partnerships, whether it's for expertise, or any other kind of partnerships. So both of these are kind of the rock beds of why we communicate, and we've had that very clear from day one, saying if we don't communicate in a compelling way, these 2 things are not going to happen, and that's consequently going to hit our quality. We'll exist, but it won't be stellar. We've tried to do 3 things, or I guess we've learned in the past 18 months 3 things that have worked well for us. The first one is we prep hard, in the sense that for every presentation, for every recruitment event, for any pitch that we have, we're a bunch of teachers, right? So just like my teachers make lesson plans, and a lot of lesson plans have a lot of visuals in them, some of them will have audio clips in them, some of them will have activities like the ones you guys just did right before this. We'll prep really hard. What I've also realized is there's not much difference in what attracts a 50-year-old donor or a grade 8 student. It's actually the same stuff. So we prep really hard. If I wouldn't give a 4-page bland text to a grade 8 student and ask him to read it, I know he will get disengaged. That's the same principle that applies to the donors as well. That's kind of the first one. So we differentiate ourselves just in the amount of prep that we go in with. A second one that has worked really well for us in terms of specifically donors is there is the formal communication channels, the quarterly reports and the annual reports and your website and all of those things. But informal communication has worked wonders for me. And what that means is 2 days ago, our first school that we started in 2015 had its annual day. As part of the annual day, our students put up a play called Beauty and the Beast. I recorded a short 3-minute clip of it and I WhatsApped it to every single donor that I have, right? And that just keeps them in loop with what's happening. It shows them what's different. That's not going to get necessarily captured in my annual report. That's not going to go in my quarterly update. And I do this very, very often. I don't even do it very systematically or structured way. I do it very organically. As and when I see an excellent in my school, I'll take a short video of it, I'll send it out. So informal communication has just helped us a lot, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's social media or email, or just examples of what's happening. And the third thing that we do very, very intentionally is, the work that every single person in this room does is incredibly hard. It's not difficult to see the struggle that every single organization is going through and the people who we are working with are going through every single day. It's very easy to know, it's very easy for people to make the picture in their mind of this poor child in the slum who's fighting for a school education and is struggling to cope with the standards of education around him with his compared to middle income, high income peers. How do we start telling stories that with this struggle also point out belief, right? So what we do very, very actively, I personally do very actively, is wherever I see a bright spot, I will amplify it, right? So I will take student interviews, I'll take pictures of their notebooks if they write a great essay, I'll take pictures of art that they've created and I will send it across to every single person I know, saying, guys, change is possible. Don't focus too much on the struggle. It's good to know the struggle, but here's a vision of what's possible. And that kind of keeps people invested and inspired and going and attracts the right people to come work with us. So these are kind of some things that we've learned in the past 18 months.
Thank you. Mavanu, I wanted to ask you, again, with this notion of, cutting through the clutter and making things visible. You've chosen what many would think is a novel way. That you have your play speaks about the issues that you want to highlight. Tell us a little bit about how you think about it.
Luckily for us, the play is the brand. And the play is through what we communicate. And we do that about to hundreds of thousands of people, 8 times a month and sometimes even more. And the point is that I have found we only restrict ourselves to empowerment of women and bringing about awareness of abuse towards women. And I found over the years, we've been doing this play for 14 years, we are into our 15th year, that when you go and ask for money, I've been told this by other NGOs, for food or for nutrition or for children, people do out of a sense of, I don't know what you call it, give. But the minute you talk about violence towards women, there's the curtain between you and the donor. I don't know why this is, and frankly, I don't know why I'm on this panel because I have a lot of questions to ask. Because I don't even know if there's a rating system for NGOs, which there should be, because I think people need to know where their money is going. I myself have I only raise funds and bring about awareness in different ways. I don't really go out into the streets to do it. I do something with Sneha, which we have supported over the years and which I'm very, very happy that we have supported. But I've had some very rather unpleasant experiences with some NGOs, and I cannot imagine the kind of competitiveness that there is between these NGOs, I remember, shall I share an experience? I remember when Eve Ensler, the playwright of the Vagina Monologues, came to India, and some NGO lady had approached her for a donation. So she told me that since you are raising funds, why don't you give this lady, her NGO, some money? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't have a sponsor. We never have sponsors, except till recently. And I said, I've already allocated money to Sneha and to 5 individuals of abuse who are survivors and who need the money, one of whom is an acid attack victim. So the NGO lady told me, she said, oh, it's okay, just to have my name there. I don't mind. I said, listen, I've got an email. I sent her an email saying I will not be able to give you even a rupee at the end of the whole thing because my money is already allocated to different NGOs and different individuals. And this lady was very happy with that. So at the end of the whole thing, I sent an account of who we had given what to, and there was a sum of $1.5 lakh that was left over after about 24 lakhs was distributed to other people. And this lady wrote to Eve Ensler that I don't see the point of this discrimination between me and the other NGOs, and why am I being given only 1.5 lakhs? And I just couldn't believe it, you know, that this lady would have the audacity to do that. So I wrote back to Eve. I said, please ask her to return my 1.5 lakhs. I'm sure Sneha will be very happy to use it for something. I never heard back from that lady. Never.
So I think what you said is quite powerful, which is sometimes you have an obligation to communicate just so you maintain credibility in the eyes of your donors. And that's not just the report you send, but really how they view you more broadly in your voice to a broader public.
And also regarding celebrities, you know, getting them, I think it's the worst thing you can do. It is an exercise in masochism. You know, sorry, but recently we were going to have a huge fundraiser for three causes that we had charted out for ourselves. Unfortunately, one of the causes that we wanted to donate to changed their aims and objectives, which did not match with my aims and objectives, the aims and objectives of my NGO. So we backed out from there, found another very credible cause. But when everybody agreed with us, including our sponsors, Sofitel, where we were going to hold the big event, they said it doesn't matter as long as the cause is for the awareness of stopping abuse towards women and empowering women. But the main entertainer of that day said, sorry, I will only do it if that name is there, because that name had more publicity value. And so she backed out, and I had to literally give up 9 months of hard work that I'd put in, because I couldn't get somebody at the last minute to come, and we needed a big name, because if we were going to charge 15,000 a ticket, then you know, we couldn't just get anybody. So I had to put the whole thing off, and so it will probably happen end of this year. So getting a celebrity is, for me, no good.
I have to say that my experience has been having a celebrity does help you open the door. There's no doubt about that. It helps you have access. The challenges with managing any of them is, of course, if you have to deal with an agent, if their image and what they care about is not consistent with, there's no congruence with what you do. And also longer term, the kind of things that Ms. Mehta talked about, which is then you're stuck with people thinking you have all the support in the world and why do you really need us?
No, and also the main thing is, excuse me, finding a credible person. I mean, here we are doing empowerment, and we don't want a man who's come and given a black eye to his girlfriend coming and supporting my NGO. I don't want that. So to find somebody who's really credible is very, very difficult. So I would rather not have them than, you know.
I've
never approached them.
It's on record, so we're not saying. But she's right. There are both challenges and of course, opportunities with that. Soumya, you raised some of the things that one has to think about when one communicates. Of course, some congruence between what you associate yourself with, but also the idea that, you know, maybe they have the mind of an 8-year-old, you have to entertain them. You have to make sure that there is a certain consistency that you talked about and frequency with which you speak to them, and also the nature of the message. I mean, those broadly seem to be the things that one thinks about. But as somebody who's our communication expert, you know, how does one, in this trying to be creative and trying to be engaging, also ensure that the work is not taken away from and, you know, your values are equally projected? Because you don't want your work down to 3 bullet points, or, you know, the prettiness of the brochure shouldn't take away from what you do. How do you think about that?
So I guess we walk both sides because obviously, I mean, there is the formality of having a firm profile, a brochure which details everything. However, as he said, Soumya very effectively communicated this, that, you know, um, you have to hold people's attention. And if you're going to start out writing epics, I mean, really, lawyers write epics where you can communicate it in half a para, it'll go into like 6 pages. That I had to send some, you know, profiles, and I was like, really, do we need that many adjectives for everybody? Because, you know, if you're being asked to get onto a panel, to be empaneled, they've done the due diligence on you. So it's a very thin line between not overdoing it, but also not taking away from what you are doing, what is your body of work. So I would say, you know, in today's day and age, a Twitter works because it gets out the message. As he says, you know, taking these small videos and posting them. That today speaks volumes. And, you know, maybe once you've got across that message and then you have the opportunity for a more personalized communication is where you can expand on what you do and put forth that body of work. But, you know, to kind of have a website also is today, I mean, where 5 years, 8 years back a website was essential. Today it is, but it is just part of the entire digital world. It is, as he said, the tip of the iceberg. That's what it is. How much, how effective it is a question mark, because maybe we just put out too much, too many details, too much. So it's a good idea to probably, you know, make it more concise and then take it forward. So even today, as we look at reworking websites also, we look at making them more effective, where at a glance you can get an idea, and then if you want further information, you can, you know, click on certain things which will then connect and so on and so forth. But, you know, it's always going to be difficult in walking this line of, say, you know, a social media like Twitter is, and actually going by the old formal way of doing things. But I think this is step 1, and that would be step 2.
And I think while social media is inevitable, it's also important perhaps to do a more nuanced strategy, which is really who is your audience.
You know, Swati, that's exactly what we do. We, you know, we really have actually had meetings to discuss how we would like to come across. You know, the tonal aspect of it, who controls what goes out.
Also
right?
whether it's on Facebook or Snapchat.
No, whatever. Looking at all the different social media that is available today, we actually have almost like an executive committee who decides what is going to go out, how do we want to sound. You know, you want to come across as taking your work seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously. So it's always this thing of how do we want to seem. The second aspect to this whole thing is also, you know, how I want to seem. Yes, that's all there, but also who's going to put it out. So, I mean, for example, a Twitter handle, right? We are very clear that, you know, it's not going to be given to everybody. You can follow us, you can add in your remarks or whatever. Like I did have a gentleman who pointed out an error on something I had put out, and I immediately contacted him. I apologized on Twitter, and then I got off Twitter and I communicated as to why we had the issue. So, I mean, you cannot really prevent people from putting negative feedback or comments. However, if you know, project yourself and put out things that are sensible, that are not overly, you know, aggressive, not this way, that way, it's an effective tool of communication, and it's the fastest way. We have 225 lawyers in our firm, in which so many of them are so young. So when we first got on to social media, they were the happiest. I mean, I have all of them saying, can we put this up, can we put that up? I'm like, really? They're all excited, they all want to be a part. Which previously it was always considered that, you know what, they'll take care of communication, whoever wants to say whatever, you know. So that I feel is, it is the way it is. It is the way this generation functions, and you just have to do it that way.
again, important to think about how one does it in the way that's meaningful to you and your audience. I want to ask you, Mr. Goenka, to what extent is sometimes brand almost a shield, right? So in the nature of the work you do, which is advocacy, we're talking about FCRA and the kind of challenges that people have. How does the fact that you are a well-known organization help you sometimes to combat those kinds of challenges?
I think we are known for having done our homework. We try and get our facts right. Our communications are very precise when we are writing to government. And the point is to get the attention, get them to read what you're writing. That's the important thing. And if people are interested, then they will always write back to you and ask you for more information, which we have at our fingertips. And as I said, the credibility is the most important part of it. So we don't make a statement unless we are sure of our facts. Which is why that, when you go to court, and we go to court very often, we have, as I said, a team of lawyers who appears for us pro bono. Because they're doing pro bono work, they won't take up an issue unless they feel there is merit in it, because they're not getting paid. Which means that they in turn do their homework. And very often we find that, we have a junior counsel appearing for us. The other side has lined up a whole team of heavyweights. But we find ourselves at an advantage because the other side guys haven't even read their briefs. They probably just read the summary or synopsis. They spent half an hour being briefed by a junior, and they don't know their facts, and so on and so forth. So we actually find that we keep our arguments short, concise, to the point. We get our facts right, we get the message across. And then, of course, it's up to the judges and other people to decide. And the fact that our credibility is unquestioned so far is, I think, the most important thing happening. A few years ago, we took up a case where a builder wanted to grab about 400 acres of mangroves in Bombay. I was personally attacked by his goons when we went for a site visit. Then an accusation was made, and he circulated that widely among media that I had demanded a 10 crore rupee bribe. And none of the media people even carried the story. And I was also a bit surprised, because when I spoke to my journalist friends, they said, look, Devi, we've known you for 25 years, and we know what builders are like. Where's the question of even ringing you up to ask you for a quote? We just threw that press release into the dustbin. So that's why credibility is very, very important.
And, in that situation, say you were engaging with the government or with the builder, certainly your credibility helped. There are also times when you're engaging against the government, right? And for instance, in the case of Greenpeace, and when their FCRA was taken away, they managed to raise a ton of money and continue as an organization and get people to volunteer time, perhaps mainly because of their brand, and they had this whole history of having worked consistently across the world on these issues in a strident but in a consistent way. So sometimes I feel your brand can also be in your favor when you're up against the wall, and even with the stakeholders that typically support you or engage with you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And why did government feel threatened by Greenpeace is a question that you should be asking, right? And the fact that Greenpeace could survive without Greenpeace does not take a single rupee from the corporate sector. They're completely dependent on individual donations from people like you and me. And the fact that they've survived without FCRA, without any of this, shows that their credibility amongst the Indian population is high. They're still getting a lot of money from individual corporations, despite the government crackdown. And yes, their brand image has helped them, because despite the fact that they're an international organization in almost 100 different countries, they're still surviving in India based on their own resources that they can generate locally.
While most of us don't love it, I think communication is important, not just in the way that you source funds, but your ability to partner with a whole set of people because they know you, they trust you, how your stakeholders view you, frankly, how your beneficiaries view you as well. When you arrive in a new place, if you have a certain reputation, they're willing to work with you more effectively. At this point, I really want to open it up to the audience. I mean, communication has many, many nuanced issues. But if there's anything top of your mind that we can help talk about?
So I'm having this issue that, we've been bringing out a newsletter for 8 years, which we've been mailing out. And recently when we did the analytics, we found there were very few clicks. And we had the suggestion to focus more on the blog than the newsletter. And yet we have this, deep down feeling that funders or any, prospective people might want to look at newsletters for the history value or something like that. So any insight on helping me make a decision on this?
See, my personal experience again with donors has been that they have too much stuff to read. And we only send them what we think is necessary. And if they want more information, they always know whom to ask. So I think for me, the minimum is the best way of communication. And newsletters, if they say the same thing again and again, become very, very boring.
He's right, because it's effective to just get through whatever you want in that blog. And as I previously mentioned that, if a person is interested, that blog content can be made interesting enough for the person to then communicate further and say, you know what, we'd like to come across, speak with you. While you may still want to continue with your newsletters, we do, because, with this thing of like, there may be few readers who want to get more information, that's good enough. But with the amount of tools available today to analyze this, I would say go with the trend. If it shows blogs, go with it, but then the blog has to be effective.
Yeah.
You have to kind of put through that point, people tend to ramble, that's the difficult bit.
So actually what we thought of was we keep the blog going, and newsletter, we'll just keep it on the website, and in any blog post we can say, by the way, our newsletter is there. So that we have the best of both.
We tend to put links in everything, hyperlinks, which then if the person does want to read further, then they can always go on to even putting our link on Twitter. If we take out a newsletter or there's an arbitration case that we have had in our favor, we put out the link. So that's the best way to get it out. If the person interested, they'll read it.
But I just want to say that I think you should congratulate yourselves on thinking of it, beyond just a communication activity to really communication strategy. Because you're going back and analyzing whether it's reaching that audience. And sometimes the solution is not necessarily to do away with your newsletter, but perhaps think about how do you get people to read it. Is there something in the frequency? Is there something that makes... So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think there is
that's why I thought of keeping it on the website till if there's a demand for, again, circulating.
And again, that involves, in anything that we decide, one part of communication is the message, the second is the tool, how the frequency... there are many things to think about, but that's great. Most people don't get to that point.
Thanks. That helps.
Yes, please.
Continuing on our point, what would be the ideal size of a blog?
We all want to know.
Not anything between, say, 100 and maybe 150, 200 words max. Because from there on, you're just repeating yourself. There's that much information, and then there's that much information.
I treat everything that we create as a hypothesis, okay? I don't know if this is going to work. So I just get it tested, honestly. So you get it ready, then 10 or 15 people who are probably going to be your harshest critics, and you show it to some people and get their feedback in, yaar, bahut lamba tha, chota tha, boring kahani thi, ek photo add kar do, whatever. And then I have a second version of it that you actually publish. So just get it tested internally quickly before you publish it. Some longer stories work really well if it's well written, engagingly written,
I think for me the real test would be that if I was going to receive that, would I read it or not?
I have a solution for this lady here. She said that her newsletter, what we do is, we don't publish a newsletter, but in our annual report, we recount all the salient events which are there, with a little write-up. We have a picture gallery, makes the whole thing attractive. A picture is worth more than 1,000 words. And that satisfies everybody's requirement for a newsletter.
Two things I wanted to highlight. Since Nashi said I can jump in. All right. 2 points. One related to branding. And for me, very often people think of branding as the logo, the color, the placement. And that's where we go wrong when we think branding is not important, because that's not very important. But reputation, that's what we are building. So if instead of using brand building, we use the word reputation building, maybe we will get it right. If you want to read more about it or hear more about it, go to my website and you will, or my Facebook or my Twitter. I've just tweeted out a video on what I mean by brand building versus reputation building. That's one. The second point was, how do we use analytics? I'll give you a personal example. I blog. So again, if you go to my website, you'll see my blog. But I don't blog, if you look at how many likes I have or shares I have, not many. That doesn't really matter to me, because very often in communication, we think of the funnel as like this, that you need to have a lot of people liking you, reading you, and eventually you will find someone who will work with you. For me, I would rather flip the funnel. I just want to get those 2 or 5 people who will read it and get them to do the population of my information. So just to give you a quick example, I blogged once about insights on fundraising in India. And the job of my staff is to look at the Google Analytics at the back. Who is clicking through within the next 24 to 36 hours? And I noticed that one particular click-through that came from an IP was sitting in Geneva, and I had 12 times that particular blog was opened. So either the guy just opened it and went and had tea, came back, it was still open. I don't know, but I knew somebody sitting in Geneva was had opened my blog 12 times, which is way more than an average opening rate. Immediately, it's Geneva, so no use sending it out at godforsaken hours. I waited till it was a nice 10, 11 a.m. in Geneva, sent an email separately to the same person, because I have the list of who my blogs were sent out to, links were sent out to. And I said, I have sent out this blog, but I thought I will just send this out to you directly, because you may be interested to know insights on fundraising in India. And within 30 seconds, I got an email from that person saying, interesting that you should contact me, because I was just thinking of doing a big market entry exercise and wondered whether you would be my consultant for doing it. So that's, again, this is how you use your efforts effectively rather than an activity. Use it systematically and more strategically. So don't blog, don't do newsletters if you're not planning to do the back end.
No, but this is something I would really, because that's why social media works. It's effective, it's rapid. I mean, once you put out something, it's out there. You can remove it, you can delete it, it's gone on 10 other servers in 20 different countries, and it's done, it's out there. And that is why it's so effective, because if you actually look at it, I mean, Soumya is a prime example. He doesn't have a firm that is doing this for him. He's doing it at a very organic level. He says, you know what, I'm doing this. I like this, what this child has done. I like this activity. Let me take a video. He's doing it all by himself. What is the cost to him? Negligible. What is the reach? Unbelievable. Ultimately, when he is going to expand from 4 schools to 40 schools, and I wish you do, that's the way it's going to go. That's really the way it's going to go. So, all this works. And I mean, even in Twitter, you follow things like impressions. So, if 5 people have shared what you have done, the 5 people that you want, those 5 people may have like 1,000 followers each. The impressions are 4,000. So you see that number of people it is, going out to. People read, we've initially tracked tools where they have to like it or share it or do something out there. However, impressions mean that they have seen it. It has gone through that, update that they get. And, till about 8 months back, my husband never used Twitter. He's a voracious reader, and my 15-year-old son told him, "Pops, you have to get onto Twitter." And he was like, okay, whatever, got on. Today, all his news is from there. And it's so easy because it's 140 characters and you get the message out there. You've got your news, you've got your updates, you've got it all. And at the end of it, it costs you nothing.
I think we have time for one more question.
So how often should one tweet or post such that you're not spamming or bombarding your followers? Because somewhere we think like the more we post, there'll be more followers, there'll be more likes, and there'll be more visibility. So I just wanted to understand that because
there is no right answer to this. It's as long as you put out information that is lucid, that is with some kind of credibility. Ultimately, it has to be about credibility. You cannot, and if you're going to put out 25 tweets that are retweeted from somebody else that is, generally fairly irrelevant and all over the net, nobody is going to want to read that. Ultimately, if you're also going to send out emails to people with communication that is just going on and on and on, at some point the person will put you into a spam because you're then beginning to kind of irritate the person rather than communicate with the person.
But there are many points of view on this. I've heard someone say that you should be tweeting 5 times a day because whatever the nature of the Google algorithms and the Twitter algorithms is that it doesn't even show up on someone's feed unless you do it that often. It matters what time of day you do. But all of this takes resources, all of this takes mind space and time.
Google Analytics actually says that they can do these training sessions. So we were approached and they asked my deputy to come, and it was some 15 Sundays and 45,000 rupees, and she was like, "Do you want me to go?" And I said, yeah, it'll be a good idea. And then we just coincidentally landed up meeting a gentleman at some get-together, and he said, "I'll give you some tips," and he gave us some tips, very basic tips. It did not require a whole load of money. So today if you actually go on to Google and probably put the question there, Google Analytics, how to nail it, you will get like 20 answers to this.
I think something that we should not get too lost in is that I have to communicate X number of times, right? That's like saying that I have to release a movie every 3 months, but I may or may not have the script for it. So I would actually turn it the other way around, saying, do you really have, how much time do you have to observe the work that you are doing from a slightly like 2 steps away? And then how often are you getting stories that you would really be proud to put out there, right? And if you're getting stories 5 times a day, by all means put it out there and you're going to see people enjoying them. And if you only see a story that's really, you feel, like this is different and I want to put it out there, it's high quality, and that only happens once a week, then keep it at once a week and people are still going to look out for that one high quality story that you're doing. So look for those high quality stories, and that will kind of decide how often you put stuff out there.
We can? Okay, please.
My question is to Mr. Goenka. I know there is no definite answer to it, but how much is too much communication when it comes to communicating with the government or the systems? Because sometimes, like in my experience, it happens that when you don't over communicate, but when you come on their radar, they start asking for favors, and then like you don't know how to say no, handle it, not handle it. If you have an experience around that, if you can share it, that would be good.
I've never actually had a situation of a government officer coming and asking me for favors. I'm the last person that they would ask. But to answer your first question, we send out a letter once. Typically, government being what it is, nobody replies to your first communication. We would send out a reminder after 2 weeks and maybe a third one after a month. And then we start getting answers. And what we also do, which is part of our strategy, is we file RTIs and ask what action will be taken on our communication. So that also then drives them to, actually doing something based on the communication. And to get back to this point about Twitter, my experience has been if you have something interesting to communicate, people will read your tweet. If you're just repeating the same stuff, people are not going to read your tweet in future.
Well, we're out of time, but I'm sure as we walk out of this session, all of you are going to make very beautiful looking, right for 8-year-old communications and do them often. I want to just, before we end, thank all our panelists, Mr. Goenka, Soumya, Dimple, Mahabanu, thank you very much. I think we just began to scrape the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to say on communication.